Hello, good evening, and welcome to my weekly Node-RED development live stream every Monday 8 p.m. Here on Twitch TV, and replays on YouTube. Do say hi wherever you are watching this. Sotiske, welcome back to your good self. Lucio, good to see you too. Say hi in the chat, and well, let's crack on. We've got, a few different things we can play with tonight. And I think one is going to be a bit of a carryover from last week. What were we doing last week? So last week I was looking at the flow debugger and some of the items we had on the backlog for that. And I've switched gears a bit this week. For those who follow the forum, I've been working on another tool that we're going to be shipping alongside 2.0, which is a flow linter. Text from my dad just interrupted me. A flow linter. So the flow debugger, the flow linter, looking at what other tools we want to add around Node-RED to sort of improve some of the developer experience. So, I've been looking at the flow linter, which I can give a very, it's the basic framework is there. We've got a lot of work still to do to add in more rules. So for those who aren't familiar with code linters, it's basically something that has a whole bunch of rules to try and improve the quality of code or to help identify common mistakes that could get made, or to try and enforce some sort of standards of how flows are constructed, or how code is written in code linters, or how flows are constructed in the context of Node-RED. There's a post on the forum where we've asked for community ideas about what sort of rules, and the key thing with the rules is they're all configurable. So, it's not going to be a fixed set that you must adhere to these rules. It's going to be a bunch of rules that you can opt in and out of depending on your personal taste. Some you can tune some of the parameters of to your own taste. But so let's just switch gears a little here. So this is what I've been working on the last couple of days. And again, this is partly because we want to get, I should say the flow linter has been around as a concept for a couple of years. And Tamura-san from Hitachi had actually, for some time, had an implementation. And it's kind of just been waiting for us to have the bandwidth to do more work on to get it ready to release. And that's really what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks. From an end user point of view, here's my messy flows that have built up, and you can see over in the sidebar, the lint sidebar. I've got a bunch of warnings, and this is what I've been working on today, is how we present this set of warnings. So you can see too many nodes on a flow, because one of the default rules is limit how many nodes you're allowed on any given tab. Here we've got a rule saying, warning that an HTTP input node does not reach an HTTP response node. And you'll see as I'm hovering it over there, it's highlighting that HTTP in node over on the left. So that's a genuine thing to warn about that you may have forgotten to wire up. Equally, sort of the inverse, we have an HTTP response node that doesn't have any HTTP input nodes wired to it, so it's not doing anything useful. Here we've got a rule that checks that all function nodes have got a name, because if we scroll to it, you can see this one's still got the default label of just function, which is not very helpful. Other stuff. I mean, the current set of rules are fairly minimal, but it's given us the basic framework for getting this flow linter working. For example, if I get rid of that semicolon, I think, and hit done, you can now see actually it's been flagged up as an error because we've got ESLint built into one of the rules that does some full-on linting of JavaScript. Now we've got a bit of a mismatch. The linting rule set is subtly different to the rules that the text editor component here is applying. So there's a bit of work to tune that to try and get those more in sync with each other. But you can see, whenever I change the flow, the results on the side reevaluate. And what's really nice is, the big refactoring I've been doing this week is getting these linting rules to run in a web worker. So if you're not familiar, the way that JavaScript in a web page is single-threaded. So that can cause performance problems if you're trying to do lots of busy work all the time. Web workers is a JavaScript standard in the browser, all the major browsers support, where you can actually run a separate thread, a worker thread, that's independent of the page that you can run work in. And it has a simple sort of message passing between the JavaScript running in the page and the JavaScript running in the web worker. And so the refactoring we've done is all of the linting rules now run in a web worker. So whenever we change something, it just re-exports the JSON, passes it to the web worker. The web worker then does the linting and passes a summary of the results back. So that's quite nice. If any of the rules end up being quite expensive to run, we're not constantly blocking the main thread of the editor. So at the moment, and again, it's not all connected. So I've been working on the UI side. It's not all connected back. If you have the linter installed, you get a new linter tab in the user settings. So these are all the rules we've got at the moment. And it tells you what it is, gives you a summary, and any of them that have any configuration options, you can go in and customize those options. And all those settings will also be, they will originate in your settings file. So this is, it's really cool. So, but at the moment, I say this is just UI work. So you can disable these rules, but at the moment, we don't honor any changes you make here, and we don't save any of the changes you make here yet. That's for a different day. But one of the things I'm finding, I'm sort of common patterns of UI development. Here I've got the flow debugger, which you saw over the last couple of weeks, and all the things we can do in the flow debugger. I'm finding more and more common patterns of UI elements that we want to try and sort of make easier to do. And one of them is very much around CSS styling. So at the moment, I think we're okay actually over here at the moment. Maybe it is more the debugger that's more of an issue. So I think I spoke about this briefly on the video last week. You can see, I can't be in two places at once. As my mouse hovers over the breakpoint over on the right here, can you see the HTTP input node in the middle of the view? As I hover over there, you can see it highlights the port, and it highlights with that orange dotted line, and that orange dotted line, the choice of that color is currently hard coded in the flow debugger. Whereas that it needs to be picking it up from the theme. And then there's the question, okay, how do we pick that up from the theme? And that's where I think we're going to spend a bit of time tonight working on. So let me just because I'm more set, I'm not going to work on the flow debugger side. I'm going to work on the linter just because that's what I've got open, and this is what I'm kind of set up to develop against at the moment. But yeah. Now I will admit this is one that I haven't got the full shape of what we need to do in my head yet. So essentially what we're going to use are CSS variables. So let me go and reference this. So what you can do in CSS, and this is supported by all browsers except IE, of course, is you can actually define some constants in the CSS for your colors, for your properties, using this double hyphen prefix. And then anywhere in your code you want to use it, you can use the var keyword and then the name of the variable, and that will substitute the property. So that's in the CSS that the browser displays. Working back from that, in our source code, we use Sass, which is a CSS compiler. What does that mean? It means we've got all of our CSS files where we define a whole bunch of constants using the dollar syntax. Some are sort of self-referential, but yeah. So we have all those colors, and then throughout our CSS, there will be places where, like the lasso, which is when you, the style of the box you get when you drag around in the editor. You can see it's stroke and fill. It's picking up the dollar view lasso stroke and dollar view lasso fill. But the key thing is, as part of the Node-RED build, we compile this SCSS into just plain vanilla CSS, which is what gets loaded into the browser. And that does all the variable substitution and the like. So it's close to what we want actually in the browser using vanilla CSS, but it's not close enough because we need a completely different syntax in this world. And I should say, and this is how the custom themes are created. Theme creators take a copy of this colors SCSS file. They can substitute all their own colors to all these different values, however they want. And then we provide a script in the top level of the Node-RED repository called build custom theme. Some instructions there. You basically point that at your custom colors file, and it builds the custom style sheets with just your custom colors applied on top of the core built-in colors. Okay, so that's a long way of saying what we want to do is... Now, what I'm not sure about whether we want to do is for all of these variables, but I certainly think there's going to be a core set of these that we want to pick up and re-export as CSS variables. So I'm just going to copy the whole lot for now, just because we can, and then how are we going to do this? I'm just trying to think structurally what's the best place to stick what we're going to do is create a new Sass file, and we're going to call it color vars, and just paste that in, and then go and find style.scss. This is the this is sort of the main entry point of the Sass build, where it imports all the different SCSS files. So you can see here, we'll import color vars, so it gets included in the build. Then, let's see if we got... Yeah, so I've got a terminal open here, which is constantly running the build whenever I make changes. and it's not complaining right now, which is nice. What we're going to do is, if we just refer back to the MDN page, is let's get the syntax right. So on the root element, we're going to define a bunch of constants. And to begin with, well, yeah, so the question is now, how many of these do we actually want to pick up? What we do want to do is yeah, there's going to be quite a lot of copy and pasting going on, which is going to be a bit dull. So let's see if we can do some let's see if we can do this a bit quicker. Let's just start on this block, turn on regular expression searching, and what we want to do is we're going to start from beginning of line, dollar symbol, capture as much as we can up until a semicolon. Then capture to the end of the line. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say minus minus, what's our, I can never remember what red UI color hyphen as a standard prefix. We're then going to put in the name of the thing, colon, and we'll set it to the value of dollar. Oh, see, I want $1, and that I don't know if that's going to confuse matters, so we'll escape that one and put a semicolon on the end. Let's see what happens if I hit replace all. Okay, not quite worked. Maybe I shouldn't have escaped it. Let's not escape it. Do replace all again. Nope, it's still getting escaped. Okay. Right, I'm not going to faff around. Right, so there we've got it all, but we've just got the pesky little space. So I'm just going to turn off regular expression search and find, and just do a regular search for that dollar, and then trim off the end space. Cool. So that's all of those. Node status colors. Yeah, okay, we'll come back to that. Let's do what? Yeah, I'm going to just comment out the node status colors for now. I can't quite wrap my head around what we should do with those. Okay, so that's just very quick and easily. You can see how now when the Css build happens, all those values will get substituted in, and we'll end up with all these constants defined in the CSS. Yeah. And let's go and have a look. Well, the Css build is passed in the background, which looks nice. So let's reload the editor. And, well, we shouldn't see any difference. We'd expect to see any difference. Okay, so lasso stroke, for example. Let's go find what lasso strokes. Let's find what true color lasso stroke is. Yeah, that's the orangey color. So that's our variable name is that big thing, which is fine. Can live with that. So let's just go into the Node-RED linter, and purely for the sake of demonstrating this is working, let's set the background of the lint sidebar to be the lasso stroke color. I mean, yeah, silly choice, but there we are. I just need to restart Node-RED to pick up that HTML change. I reload, and it's not, and there's nothing there to be seen. Okay, now why is that? Okay, well, you can see over in the CSS inspector here, the background is picking up the var. If I click on the var, does it? Oh, look here. Okay, this is interesting. Can you see down here in the inspector here how all the dollars haven't been substituted? So actually loaded in the browser, it literally is dollar primary font and dollar this, dollar that. So the Css build hasn't actually compiled it, which is very curious. Have I mucked up any of the syntax? I don't think so. Yeah, so here's flows.css. You can see the dollar property name, dollar label color, dollar view background. That's all good. So why isn't SCSS dealing with that? It's definitely including the file because we can see it in the inspector over here, down in this bottom right corner. But we're not seeing any of the variables actually substituted. How strange. Okay, let's go have a look at Css CSS Custom Property. You thought the root var had to be the value, not another var. I thought the root var had to be... How do you mean? Let's go look at... So you can see in all these examples, you typically set it to the semicolon root so it's available everywhere. Custom property case sensitive, well, that's okay, we're all lowercase. So yeah, here's a working example. Colon root, and they substitute, well, they set main BG color to be brown, and then they use var main BG color. And that works. I think the problem we're getting though is this SCSS isn't substituting dollar primary font for the value of dollar primary font. Right. Custom properties. Right. CSS Custom Properties, also known as CSS Variables, have an unusual declaration syntax. They allow almost any text at all in their declaration values. What's more, those values are accessible with JavaScript, so any value might potentially be relevant to the user. This includes values that would normally be parsed as Css script. Because of this, Css parses custom property declarations differently than other property declarations. Here we are. All tokens, including those that look like Css script, are passed through to CSS as is, which is exactly what we're seeing. The only exception is interpolation, which is the only way to inject dynamic values into a custom property. So we need the hash and brackets. That's what we need. All right, so let's go back to doing some regex searching. So we want to capture $everything to a semicolon, and we want to replace that with hash that. Oh, we still want the semicolon on the end. Replace all. Cool, cool. Save that. Just check. Oh, errors. Yeah, okay, the status colors has slightly come back to bite us. Oh, that's interesting. Even though it's commented out, Css is just semantically it still sees that. So maybe it needs a different type of. Yeah, okay. It's happier when I do a individual line quotes rather than a block quote. Fair enough. I can forgive that. So let's go reload Node-RED. Oh, and there's a bright orange background. Cool. There we are. See, I've not done I've done bits and pieces with Css. I've not, and this is the first time I've done stuff with custom properties, so that's good. So we have that. Now, one thing I just wanted to, can I use CSS Custom Properties, CSS Variables? So can I use says, all good, not supported on IE11. Issues with Edge 50. Okay, but that's ancient. So yeah, they are widely supported in all the latest stables. IE11. I'm always sort of slightly mixed feelings around IE11. There is a polyfill for it, which, yeah, okay, doesn't get a lot of action. I'm not going to lose too much sleep about IE11 tonight. Yeah, we can ignore that for the time being. All right, so what have we got? The question is now, it's one thing for us in our own Css to have this 100, 200, almost 300 variables. But that's entirely internal. That's for our core CSS. So I don't mind that we have lots, especially as some are kind of just contextual redefinitions. So yeah, like the list items for color should be the primary text color, for example. Now the question is, as soon as we start exposing them as CSS custom properties, third parties can legitimately start to use them, at which point they become part of our external API, at which point we can't change. And we kind of want to make sure we are doing the right thing. Well, yeah, I'm not going to do that bit of it on this stream. I think there'll be some checking to go through to make sure there's nothing on that list that we shouldn't, not that we shouldn't expose, nothing on that list which is kind of pointless to expose, I think, more to the point, so we don't make life hard for ourselves in the future. But this is good because what I can now do is, let me, if I flip over to I'm pretty sure I have a theme just sat waiting. Yeah, solarized light. Let's go to solarized dark just because it's it's just a bit more distinctive. Ooh. Restart NodeMon. And the reason I'm doing this is so, well, we can put some of this into action actually in the flow linter from the get-go. So if I now reload, it's the nice dark theme. So you can see over here, these guys are already looking okay. Slightly strange. Don't know if it comes through your resolution, but some strange artifacts that don't necessarily show up on the light theme. But for the sake of testing, too many windows. For the sake of testing, what we're going to do is I want a hover effect on those results. So whenever you hover over one, highlight it. Now this is an effect I'd hidden away, shied away from doing in the flow debugger because we didn't have the CSS variables. So yeah, what we would do previously would be something like, when you hover over a list element, make its background AAA. Before I carry on with this, I really need to, get rid of that bright orange background because it's somewhat detracts from, it's proving things are working, but it's, no. Oh yes, I have to restart. That, reload. There we are. Okay, so that's slightly interesting. I'm only getting, why am I only getting the border? I'm only getting the border because it's this, I'm still tidying up the HTML structure of these entries. And I think it's because background. Who's giving me my background color? No one's giving that a background color. These guys get a background color. That's the problem. So message meta and message payload. So yeah, this is reusing styles from the debug sidebar, which I'm not convinced we want to do, but yeah, again, for the sake of showing something working here, let's So whenever we hover over a list item, we want the message name background to do something. And we also want we want debug message meta to do something. And we want debug message payload to do something. And the nice thing with SCSS is you can also nest all this stuff, so you don't have to write things out so verbosely like you do in plain CSS. But unfortunately in a plugin, well, I haven't put in a SCSS build stage in this, so I've got to write it out the long way. Okay, so what we want is to set the background now to, let's go check our color vars we've just created. And I'm pretty sure we've got list item background hover. So this is nice. So as a developer, I don't have to worry. Yeah, if Node-RED provides a set of contextual named variables. It means a plugin or node developer doesn't have to try and match colors, they just have to pick the right variable. Let's go reload. So now, yeah, so now you can see you get the highlight, which I assume, I've not tried this theme before, I will admit. Well, that's interesting. So we get a different, when we highlight this list, we are getting a different color. Now that might just be inconsistencies of our own. What about the type search? Yeah, see, that's getting a dark color. That's getting a light color. Why? This is more likely than not our own inconsistencies in what styles we use. But in terms of what have we got that deals with hovering? So we're setting to secondary background hover. I'm just interested to see for that search box what, when we hover in the search box. So we say list item background hover. We do set it to that. List item background hover. Is that what I've done? List item background hover. Yeah. So why does that look different? Let's do a bit of, let's debug this. What do we reckon the hover is going to be on? It's going to be on the search result. Let's force a hover on it. You can see it's gone dark. Oops, styles. Forcing the hover. Color, background color. Yeah, so background color here is red UI search result hover. Red UI search result hover. Red UI search result hover should be list item background hover. But for some reason it's not coming through as that. Interesting. Now, is this a bug in, well, how do we debug? Because I'm well aware this is coming through as a theme. Okay, rather than try and debug the theme, although which I'm sure you'll be interested in that side of it, what I'm going to do is actually disable the custom theme just to rule out anything that could be introducing confusing matters. And if I come into our color file, and so here we have list item background hover, and I'm just going to set that to a glorious red. Rebuild, restart, churn. Okay, so we reload. Back to the normal theme. If I do search, debug, okay. So it is picking up. So yeah, maybe there's a bug in the theme generator. Need to investigate that. But you can see we get the red background there, and when I hover over these, we get the matching red background. It's probably not good enough just to do the background. Let's actually, yeah, let's put that back to secondary background hover. So if you remember in the solarized dark theme, the hover was a dark color. And see, that's quite light, the grey we get here. So, okay, there's something funky going on there. I'm not going to chase that down right now, but that's for another time. But the main point is, assuming the theming works, we can now put this hover effect on in the knowledge that the colour of that hover will be picked up from the theme, which is all the whole point of this whole exercise. Nice, right? So so I think what I'm now going to do is just spend a bit of time. Yeah, well, to be honest, Michelle, when you say inconsistency on the theme itself, in theory, assuming your theme is just generated from a custom color file, then that should all just work. But, I don't know. I'm not going to... Yeah, we can investigate that another time. But yeah, I'm to just do a little bit of work just to neaten up the presentation of these guys. That's what we're going to do. So at the moment, when we have a linting error, you get the orange sidebar, which to highlight warnings versus errors. At the moment, I think we have everything set to be a warning. We don't easily provide a way to change the severity, because a lot of the model we have for the linter, we are learning and taking from ESLint, which is another OpenJS Foundation project for linting JavaScript code. But do I see those artifacts on the vanilla theme? Yeah, there is something there. Can I tease my... Yeah, those artifacts are there. You can just see. I know why they're there. They're there because this orange thing is a border. It's a thick border versus a thin border along the bottom. And where two borders meet, you always get a bevel, the diagonal between the two borders, which is where one switches over. So that's not a theme bug. That is a bug in how that element is being constructed. So that will be something to fix in the core. In the debug node predominantly, because like I said, we've stolen the code for generating it from there. Yeah, a relief for you, perhaps. Yeah. So could the lint message have a faded color background to show the difference between warn and error? Maybe orange for warn and red for error. Yeah, that would be one. I'm just trying to think. So interestingly, when I look at Atom and its linting errors, it provides a table and it puts it down the bottom because it values width over height, if that makes sense. And if I open up like one of the files here, you can see how it presents it. It's got the color-coded severity, effectively the rule set that's flagged it, a long message, and because they value the width over height, their messages can run on quite long, and then a location. And yeah, you can click on these to jump to any of them. So yeah, the other thing I'm conscious of, if this is made to look too much like debug messages, then at a glance the user could mistake it for debug rather than its own thing, which is the linter. So yeah. So where are we? We're in here. We're in nrlint. We're not in the settings panel. We are in display results, editable list, result list is the result list, very imaginatively named. And here is result list. Let's just give ourselves more room. So yeah, so this is the code that actually builds up the element we see. We add mouse handlers for when the mouse enters and leaves, which is why if we say, yeah, so you can see the nodes getting highlighted as I yeah, it's highlighted. Well, not to they are color coded, but because these are all warnings, they've all got the same orange down the side. I think, if memory serves, if I go and put in a duff bit of code in the function node, then yeah, so there you see the red error coloring for that. But yeah, so well, so what? So what are we doing? At the moment, this does steal a lot of the debug message UI appearance. My only reservation with that is if we want to tweak it, I don't really want to override the styles. I'd rather have a clean set of our own. But if we just... So here's the list item, which is the full list item. And then the div, which is the actual container we're given to put our content into. And so within that, you can see is where we actually add this debug message div, and the message level 30 is what gives it the orange. 30 means warning, 20 means error, 10 is fatal, but yeah. And then the color 40 will be info, 50 debug, 60 trace, I think, something like that. But the point being, we've got the debug message, and that has a slight bit of padding, which is okay, I guess. Message meta, which gives us that little strip at the top where we can put metadata about it, and then message payload, which is again in debug, where you would actually see the body of the message, followed by the message itself. Yeah. So yeah, it's really just playing around now with, okay, what else could we do to improve the usability of this? So one thought would be, just in terms of presentation, if I just trigger the debugger, what it looks like when we queue up the messages, you can see in the header, rather than just give the node ID, we actually give a little node icon and label rather than just the node ID. I think that's something worth doing. Yeah. Okay, well, let's start there as a experiment. We are going to... What are we going to do? We're going to jump over to the flow debugger code. And because I was there earlier, I know where to look for it. and basically copy and paste all of that as a blob. And then over here in our meta row, I'm going to comment out what's there at the moment for adding in the link. And we just dump that in. And unashamedly at this point, I am just dumping that in. Node ID, I think, is the right name for our variable at this point. Is it? No, res ID for some. Oh, no, let's fix that because I think it was result ID was where that came from. But let's change that to node ID. Yeah, that's fine for now. So node ID, create node icon. True, because we want the label on there as well. Yeah, just a bit of safety of if something shows up that doesn't come up in through as a node, then we'll just add the raw ID in so we don't lose the information, it's still there. Get rid of that because that's to do with the flow debugger. And then here we've got the enter and leave to highlight the node when you hover over it. I'm going to comment that out because we already do that when you hover over the entire entry. Oh, and where are we appending this? Append to source link, which is source link. And source link, we need to, instead of top row, here we call it the meta row. Oh, and path parts. Oh, okay, it's that. So the reason we do this margin calculation in the flow debugger, if we're tracing something, let's try it here. Just trash some of these messages. Ooh, let's step that one forward. Okay, that's gone to random. We don't care about that. If I step forward this message, you can now see we've got to this subflow. If I step forward now, can you see how it, because we're inside the subflow, the icon's changed to show a subflow icon, and then, which if I hover over it highlights the subflow. If I hover over the switch node, change node, that is inside the subflow. And in fact, I should be able to click on that and it takes us there, which is nice. And you can see there's a message queued up. Oh, I love it when it all just works. Anyway, but can you see the way we sort of stagger the icons slightly? That's what this maths is doing for that effect. As we only have one ID to concern ourselves with, we're saying 0 times 0. Yeah, that's all going to be 0. So margin top is going to be 0. Margin left, again, is going to be 0. It's almost probably not worth setting, so let's not. Let's see what that looks like. So we just save that file to restart Node-RED. Reload. Cool. So here you can now see we are getting a bit more of a better indication of the node that has hit the error. But you'll notice we do have some which are just IDs, which was our fallback case. Our fallback case here where we go look up the node with that ID. If it doesn't exist, we just stick the text in. So you can see we're getting text. Reason being, the ID this lint rule is reporting is the whole flow, not just the thing. Mine's gone blank. You know what I mean. So what we actually need to do is, I wonder, what do we need to do? We need to do red.nodes.workspace. So first we try looking it up as a node, then we can try looking it up as a workspace. And I'm 80% sure that we can just pass a workspace through to create node icon and it will still work, he says somewhat hesitantly. I mean, I know I've written code in some places to deal with that scenario. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so you can see we've got the flow icon. Now it's looking slightly funky. It's looking a bit dark. Well, what's going on there? Oh, and have we killed? Yes. Fault. I say it every week. There's a bug that no one seems to be able to track down with Node.js on Apple M1 hardware, that if you're doing stuff with pipes, you sometimes randomly get an fault because it's, well, yeah, anyway. Okay, well, we've now got some icons. I want to improve the appearance of that flow one, but not doing that here and now. Yeah. Okay, well that looks quite nice. I'm going to do... what am I going to do? I'm going to do something we've not done before. He says confidently. There's a bit of the UI that there is a component in the editor that we don't... oh yes, yeah, other than color we don't have severity label. You're right. It will be worthwhile having that label explicitly on screen somewhere, and we'll come back to that in a minute. Yeah, what we have in Node-RED, and only core things use it, is this red.statusbar. Red.statusbar is this strip along the bottom here, where you have the zoom controls and the view navigator. This is actually a component like the sidebar, where anything can add content using a standard API. So for a bit of fun, as well as adding the sidebar tab, we're going to add I can't remember the API for it at all, so let's just go check it out. Status bar. Widget identifier. And element. Okay. Status widget. We're just going to create, for the moment, an empty div. Okay. Status widget, and then in our function display result here, which as it stands builds up a count of errors and warnings. After it's done that, we are going to set the content of the status widget to be something like this. FA let's go look up my font awesome icons. We want an icon for warning and we want an icon for error. So warning has the exclamation mark. Do we have, is there a built-in one for error? No. What does, so you can see down here, they use the stop symbol for errors. Do we have, no. Don't have an octagon. Halt. See, I'd rather not rely just on colour. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, this is just for a quick experiment, just to show the idea. So we're going to stick an exclamation triangle, which is intended to be a warning. What was the other one? Exclamation triangle and exclamation circle. Say that. So we can say the circle is for errors. So we want count. Ooh, missed off the one. Warn count. Yeah, I think may just need to stick the whole lot in a span. Let's see what we get. So we reload. And look, in the status bar, if I just, let's just hide DevTools, so it's disappeared down the bottom of the screen, so it needs some work to prettify it, but we now have a little summary of the linter down there. What we can do is make that clickable. Let me just check what red UI footer button. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? I'm going to make it a button. I've no idea what this is going to look like, because like I said, this is the first time I've done something down in the footer like this. So I don't know if we've got all the styles in place to support it, but it's a bit of fun. If you click that, what we want to do is a red.sidebar.show lint. So we want to show the linter sidebar. Yeah. Because if you're developing, your chances are you're not going to have the linter open all the time. You don't want any errors to be, you don't have to check the lint tab to know that there's an error. So, okay, well, we've lost. So yeah, let's say we're on the info tab and you see, oh, there's an error. Click the button and it takes you to the lint tab, which is quite nice. But you can see we've lost all the content. And I think that's because footer button has a fixed width. So shouldn't that go in the status bar of the linter? Absolutely, and we'll come back to that. Yeah, we will come back to what more information needs to be in the linter sidebar. What we're doing here, though, is just having the linter information, if you haven't got the lint sidebar open, surfacing it somewhere else in the UI. So with one click, it takes you there. It's something I've been meaning to do with, for example, the projects as well, to reflect when you've got uncommitted changes or you've got pushes and pulls or whatever it might be. Add a little status widget in the footer to give you that summary, just to help you remember that you need to commit some changes or there's work to do. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, well spotted, Noxie. So And whilst that's absolutely true, the actual issue here is we want width to be set to auto. Just because the default style for the footer buttons ensures they're square without worrying about the size of the icon inside it, because not all Font Awesome icons are the same width. Anyway, let's go let's see what that looks like. Is that dead? No, that's reloaded. Let's reload this. Yeah. Oh, okay. There's a bit of tidy up still to do, but it's in the footer. It gives you a nice prompt that there's something to do. Okay, let's actually tidy it up. We want to set on the button. Okay, it's got no padding at the moment. We want to set the CSS width to auto. And we're going to set padding to 0, top and bottom 3. Oops. 3 should do it. Let's just test that over here. So we set padding 0 and 3. Yeah, that works a little bit better. 0, 3. What we'll also do actually is set its default text to something like, no, what we'll set its default text to is no, we'll leave that be for the moment. Because where was it? So here's where we generate the HTML for it. I'm just going to steal that and I'm going to replace that with a function. Update status widget. Warn is warn count. Error is count. Good, good, good. And then we'll just define a function here. Update status widget. Options. Oops, delete that, indent that. And we wanted ops.error, ops.warn, and then just steal that line of code, and then down when we initialize it, here, we just call that with, widget not width, update status widget, yeah, have I typoed somewhere? Width. Unfortunately, because there's a slight delay between me talking and me seeing your message, what bit of code was I looking at when you spotted? Update state, thank you. Got there. See? Helpful having extra eyes. So let's keep an eye out on the bottom. Yep, starts at 0, 0 and then goes up to 6, which is cool. But, right, yeah, it's cool. And it'd be nice to have some color down there, just to help draw the attention. And again, color to be consistent with over there. So the question is, going back to where we started, is do we have CSS variables for these colors? So ffdf9d, let's go. We do. Debug message border. Okay. So that's good. I may want to come back and rename them to not be so tied to debug. We might want to have standard colors for errors, warnings, or whatever it might be. But based on the work we've done, we know we should now have variables we can use, which we do indeed. So we can define red UI nr lint status warn, set its color to, is that right? Yep, warning. And error. So, and then we come down to wherever my update status widget function is defined here. Then, yeah, so we just need to, let's do this properly. Status widget empty, remove what's there currently. We're going to start with the error span. Oh, I just need to get that out of my paste buffer before I lose it. I'm going to grab that, da-dum, da-dum. We want all of that, close it, and that's goodness. And then we're going to say if ops.error is greater than 0, then error span.add class that, except the error version. And then we'll append to status widget. Okay, we are nearing the end at this point, but I hope it's been interesting. We've knocked off. I'm not going to start talking about wrapping up because that's a surefire way for me to make a silly mistake in what I'm writing. So let me just get that done. Ops.warn is greater than 0, add a warning. Yeah. Good. Right. Let's save that. Check it's restarted. So refresh. So in the status widget now, 0, 0, and then you can see because it's non-zero, it's gone that yellow, but that's a horrible color. It might work for highlighting on the side, but I think we need a different color for text that's meant to be readable. So it's got to have be a much better contrast to our grey background. So, but at least it's proved the idea that we can pick up a color from the theme and selectively color based on what the problem is. We could use darken, except it depends if it's a light or dark theme. So we don't know. I try and avoid using things like darken in our code because it makes it harder for the theme creators to then. It means we've made the choice for them that this color has to be a darker version of this one, whereas the theme, it might make more sense for it to be lighter or not as dark or some other customization of the color. But anyway, that's goodness. And the status widget is cool. I think it will make sense to have a similar one for the flow debugger. Possibly, I don't know. But something to play around with. Yeah. You know what? I think we're going to pretty much wrap up around this point. I think made some nice bits of progress on a bunch of stuff that we wanted to get done. Particularly the CSS stuff I wanted to get done, make sure that gets into the beta for 2.0. I'm hopeful we can get the initial beta out later this week. We'll see. Next week, I might not be streaming next week. It's school holidays and it's actually a public holiday next Monday, so double whammy. So might be going away for a few days for the first time in quite some time. So yeah, I'm going to call it now. No live stream next Monday, but I will be back in 2 weeks' time. Also tempted to do some random streams at other times, just if I'm working on something interesting and want to spend an hour talking to whoever happens to be out there at that time. But I don't know. We'll see. Otherwise, yeah. Thanks for joining. Thanks for commenting. If you're watching the the replay, do leave a comment. Hope you will stay well. I hope you'll have a good time. Keep an eye out for 2.0 beta. If the flow linter is something you're curious about, go find the thread on the forum where I've we've invited feedback on what additional rules could be there. The main thing to bear in mind is it's linting of the flow file. So there have been some suggestions about warning if you're running an old version of Node-RED, that type of stuff. That's out of scope. The linter is intended to be a tool. You give it flow JSON and it gives you back results. So so there've been some really interesting ideas, but open to get people's other ideas what else it could be. But with that, I'm going to say good night. Have a good week. Have a good 2 weeks. I'll be back soon. Otherwise, you all know how to reach me. Do come say hi. And yeah, that's enough. Cheerio. Bye. Oh, I can't find the button. There's the button. Good night.